Today we'll be reading a long article, so hang on there, and it's by Infowars. Report: Antifa receiving military training in Syria. Vegas shooter's girlfriend traveled to Middle East, even after ISIS takes responsibility. MSM fights to cover up Islamic link, just like San Bernardino. And the article is written by Mimi Al-Laham and Kit Daniels. It was written the 3rd October of 2017. Editor's note: just like the Pulse nightclub massacre, the San Bernardino attack, and the 2009 featuring Hood shooting, the mainstream media is doing everything it can to cover up the connection between Islamic terrorism and major massacres on US soil. Establishment reporters are even claiming it's fake news that ISIS took responsibility for the attack, even though they did take responsibility for the attack. The following article reveals the dark triad of Antifa, Kurdish members of ISIS, and anarcho-communist Kurds, and by implication why a country music festival, the bastion of flyover country Americana, was targeted. For background, read this related article first. FBI source: Vegas shooter found with Antifa literature, photos taken in Middle East. Members of Antifa are illegally crossing the Syrian border to receive military training from Kurdish militias as part of a dark triad between Antifa, anarcho-communist Kurds, and Kurdish members of ISIS. The US-backed Kurdish People Protection Unit's YPG has anarcho-communist politics, which has attracted Americans and European Antifa to fight alongside them in what they refer to as the Rojava Revolution. Security agencies are concerned that these Antifa members will continue revolution at home once they return. Already FBI sources have revealed Antifa literature and photos taken in the Middle East, which were found in the hotel room of suspect Las Vegas shooter Stephen Paddock. In a policy that began under the Obama administration, the US military is providing weapons and training to YPG members, many of whom are directly linked to the PKK terrorist organization. This policy wrapped under the guise of fighting ISIS. However, backing terrorists to fight terrorists hasn't worked in the past. This is Paddock's companion, Marlou Danley, pictured here in Dubai. An uproar occurred when US Special Forces in Syria attached YPG insignia to their arms, and the US military was accused of supporting terrorism, to which the Pentagon admitted wrongdoing and said the use of the insignia was unauthorized. As a result, the US military was forced to rebrand YPG as Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, to provide plausible deniability. The weapons and military training that the US military has provided them with are in turn being provided to Western members of Antifa. These members of Antifa, along with the Kurds, have been constantly glorified in the mainstream media. Rolling Stone magazine interviewed several Western leftists that are fighting in the YPG. And the fact that these anarcho-communist militias have women who are fighting ISIS is something that is oft repeated. Antifa groups in Europe and North America have posted photos of their fighters holding up the Kurdish flag, YPG flag, along with the Antifa flag in Syria. And here's some small text. March 31, 2017. The ruling political party of Rojava, a majority Kurdish area of northern Syria, is the Democratic Union Party, PYD. They are connected to the Kurdish Workers' Party, PKK, in Turkey. PYD supports socialism, social justice, and communalism. They are enemies with the Kurdistan Democratic Party, KDP, which is the ruling political party in Iraqi Kurdistan. The PYD has shut down the offices of most rival Kurdish political parties in northern Syria and rules its territory as one-party state. The US-sponsored YPG is the military wing of the PYD. The PYD also operates a 15,000 members police force called the Azareliusdystopia. I might have pronounced that wrong. Now this group of militias is calling themselves the International Revolutionary People's Guerrilla Forces, IRPGF, and the vanguard of the revolution in Rojava, who vow to fight capitalism all over the world. This is already happening as Antifa members were part of an armed demonstration in Phoenix, Arizona. The new doomsayers taking up arms and preparing for catastrophe, American liberals. Kurdish military training is spreading to Antifa and other radical leftist groups in the West. One of the groups involved, the John Brown Gun Club, already glorifies the Kurdish YPG. It's plausible the photos from the Middle East that were found in the room of Las Vegas shooter, along with Antifa literature, were photos of Antifa fighting alongside Kurds in Syria. And it's also possible the shooter crossed into Syria to receive military training. Foreign fighters are able to legally fly to Turkey and then illegally cross into the Syrian border without being detected. Germany is reeling from a large population of Antifa, 1.2 million Kurdish immigrants and Kurdish militant groups working together in large numbers. Furthermore, thousands of Germans have illegally crossed into Syria to fight alongside Kurds. Thus, it's no surprise when Germany Antifa gangs show up at right-wing rallies with hundreds of people and commit violent attacks. The media, however, continues to glorify Kurdish fighters as the only people fighting ISIS, while ignoring the efforts of the Syrian and Russian governments. This is mainly because the military-industrial complex had plans to balkanize Syria and Iraq in the project for a new Middle East. And they don't care if they accomplish it using Islamic terrorists or Kurdish communists. The Kurdish militias are not much better than ISIS, nor as liberal and democratic as the media portrays them to be. In fact, the Kurds themselves are not one homogeneous group, with the joining majority of Kurds being Sunni Muslims, and some of them even joining ISIS. In Iraqi Kurdistan, the percentage of female genital mutilation is around 70%, while it's zero in all other parts of the country. In fact, Iraqi Kurdistan, along with Yemen and Egypt, are the only areas of the Middle East where female genital mutilation is routinely performed. But even the communist YPG has been active at ethnically cleansing Christian Assyrians, Arabs, and other minorities in the areas they deem the Kurdish state. Oftentimes, the areas they claim don't even have a Kurdish population. Since the Kurdish population aren't a majority in the areas Kurdish militias are trying to annex, they are carrying out these ethnic cleansings of non-Kurdish minorities in an attempt to achieve a demographic shift. The YPG forcibly disarmed Assyrian Christian militias after assassinating their leader, David Jindo. In Iraq, the US-backed Kurdish militia Peshmerga forced Christian and Jazdala militias to disarm before abandoning them to genocide once ISIS attacked. And the Kurdish regional government of Iraq is still not allowing these minority groups to return to their villages, even though ISIS was pushed out 2 years ago. The idea that Kurds deserve their own state is something that is being perpetually pushed by pro-war think tanks and liberal sympathizers. However, this pays little attention to the origin and history of the Kurdish people. For one thing, The word Kurd was a designator for Iranian nomads. Like many other nomadic groups, such as Bedouins and Gypsies, they cross borders tending to livestock. They typically cross through Iraq and Turkey, following the Euphrates River, and live mostly in mountains. In 1915, the Turkish government promised Kurds the homes and cities of the Armenian Christians if they were to participate in the Armenian and Assyrian genocide. However, after Kurds complied, Turkey reneged on the deal of giving them autonomy. The population of Kurds in North Syria resulted from multiple waves of illegal Kurdish immigration from Turkey after they failed to mount insurrections against the Turkish government. Many of these Kurdish were given refuge status by the Syrian government at the time. But now these same refugees are demanding their own state and are trying to claim ownership of much of Syria's oil fields and are blocking the Syrian army from fighting east of the Euphrates. This foreign policy of balkanizing Middle Eastern countries to create a Kurdistan may have explosive implications, not just for the Middle East, but also for the West, as it breeds a new form of Antifa resistance as well as terrorism in the same way that ISIS was bred through US deep state foreign policy. There's a video here, not sure if it's going to be too long or too short, but let's watch it.
They're meeting, they're preparing gun attacks, bomb attacks, attacks on crowds, of stabbings of conservative groups. And now the left's going to use Islamists as cutouts, or at least say they were Islamists, so they then don't get the blame, but they're going to use that to come to power. If you just joined us, we got 58 people dead. The number keeps climbing as folks succumb to their injuries. Unfortunately, pray for the victims, pray for the dead, pray for their families, pray for America, pray for the world, because we're entering that great time of global crisis. North Korea just had a ship seized with massive high-tech weapons, trying to sneak them into the Middle East. Trump sending another aircraft carrier. Our Pentagon sources are they're strongly looking at hitting North Korea very, very soon. Islamic State has taken responsibility as of about 2 hours ago for the terror attack that is the largest gun attack on a civilian crowd in U.S. history. Witnesses, multiple witnesses are reporting that they were told to get out. They were soon going to be killed that night. I played a clip earlier from the Friday show covering a Paul Joseph Watson article, who's joining us here in about 3 minutes, where Paul chronicled local news, police reports, communist announcements, Antifa announcements, Democratic Party announcements, and videos that Steven Crowder undercover folks got. We, of course, a month before had, just showing all the multiple sources, Doug Hagman, who we should probably get on later today, or during War Room at least, if he can't come on now, with his undercover sources saying they're meeting, they're preparing gun attacks, bomb attacks, attacks on crowds, of stabbings of conservative groups. This is so important. And Matt Bracken said 6 months ago he would imagine the leftists would attack a football game, because the NFL is seen as leftist now, during a future NFL crisis. I remember 6 months ago, we got to find the clip. He said, I imagine when the next football season comes up in the late summer, early fall, somebody would then arc in, even outside the stadium, arc in a couple thousand rounds, killing and wounding a bunch of people, and then claiming it's a right-winger with right-winger InfoWars-type literature left the scene. And we war-gamed that this morning. We think that's probably the next big scenario. But we've talked about rock venues, country venues, churches for whites being targeted or Christians being targeted. You saw the Sudanese immigrant invader attack last weekend and shoot 9 people, killing 1. The media celebrated that. We've seen Islamic attacks in Canada, Islamic attacks in France, and the Prime Minister responded by saying, quote, end white supremacy, close quote. That story's on newswars.com. You cannot make up the magnitude of this. And now the left's going to use Islamicists as cutouts, or at least say they were Islamicists, so they then don't get the blame, but they're going to use that to come to power. Paul Watson has written an article where the left in mass is celebrating the attacks, just like they celebrated Texas being flooded, saying it was all white supremacists, from Charlie Hebdo to CNN. So, Paul, we're going to break in a few minutes, but what is your first approximation on this massacre?
Well, that it's absolutely horrific. I mean, the video coming out of it last night was absolutely chilling, Alex. The other thing is obviously this ISIS claim of responsibility, which there's this whole thing going around the internet, and we don't know anything yet. We don't have much information at this point, but people say, oh, ISIS claims responsibility for everything. Well, that's not actually true. And in fact, the Associated Press admitted it. They said, quote, ISIS is not known to have claimed any attacks to which it is not at least loosely linked. That's the Associated Press, not me, not Alex Jones. So a lot of people are out saying this has got absolutely no credibility. Well, it is from their official propaganda agency. The Associated Press reports they don't claim events that aren't at least linked to them in some way. We had the Edmonton attack yesterday, where it was a Somali migrant ISIS supporter who literally had an ISIS flag in his vehicle, ramming into police and pedestrians. ISIS did not claim responsibility for that. If they had claimed responsibility, everyone would have believed them, but now they're claiming responsibility for this, and nobody believes them, or at least most prominent people don't believe them, because they say, oh, they claim responsibility for everything.
Well, also, the brother, in an interview with Reuters, said his brother didn't own guns, but other media is just saying he did.
Well, they're saying that he had a hunting license, but there wasn't that many guns in his home, given the area, that it's a big gun ownership area. And his family said that he wasn't a gun nut, or he wasn't heavily into owning guns. So it doesn't really line up.
Have we found his political persuasion? Some are saying he was a leftist, but then we can't track the trails.
Well, we don't know. I mean, there's so much disinformation floating around, and there has been all day, that a lot of it's been proven wrong. But we know the crowd that he fired on, like this, the whole narrative doesn't fit that he was some kind of right-wing white supremacist, okay? He's got a non-white girlfriend. He's firing into a crowd which is predominantly white people. They're country music fans.
Yeah, he was probably a Saturday Night Live viewer. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine. If you're interested in healthy thyroid, if you're interested in well-being, if you're interested in having a higher IQ, which this has been linked to, get your powerful Survival Shield X2 at InfoWarsStore.com.
Well, this was a quite well-rounded article, I must say, and quite full of details, and, well, as you can see, it has links to most of the things they mention, and of course, this video and article was written, I think, just one day after the attacks happened. So obviously they have updated information since then. But let's start a bit about the actual shooting. Since then, I have seen and heard lots of witnesses and experts, talking about these things, that there was actually two shooters. And if you look at these videos, you're gonna hear one shooter close by, and then you're gonna hear a shooter from a far distance.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like automatic gunfire. Now it sounds like it's coming from farther away.
you might say, well, this guy had like 50 guns or something in his room, right? Because he moved them in through suitcases, right? Somehow to his room, which is something that people should have been suspicious of. But still, he managed to get the weapons and everything set up in his room. He bashed the windows because you can't open them, and he started to open fire. And isn't it possible that it could have been simply a gun with, I guess, more as of a suppressed noise shooting? I mean, if you listen to the clips, it really sounds like it would be people shooting from different directions, and people even said that they were shot on different directions. It really sounds suspicious. And I mean, the people who were being shot at, some of them were so certain that they were more than 100% sure that it was two shooters. But what's most confusing to me is how room service and people didn't catch on to this guy sooner. Though, however, a security guard was called to check on a room that was open. When he was going to close that door, because they have a policy to do that, the guy had mounted security cameras. Somehow he had mounted security cameras. Why did not anyone notice this? Why did not anyone stop this guy? And this security guy, he was walking to close this door, and then all of a sudden this terrorist freak, Paddock, came out and shot the guy in the leg. And then he went to kill the others 6 minutes later, because this was 6 minutes before the shooting. And I don't think the security guy died. He was shot in the leg, and I guess Paddock panicked and retreated back to his room and continued with the mission. He had even planned to escape after this. But the suspicious thing is, how come room service didn't go into his room? How come no one went into this and inspected? Because from my understanding, Las Vegas hotels have a quite high security measure, and for this guy to just mass these weapons in this hotel had to take some time. I mean, I don't think he did this in one day. He might also have had help to move these things in, and it's also proven through hotel valets or whatever they're called that this guy was with someone else in the room. And it said that it was some woman. And in the receipts, it clearly says that they had dinner for two. Maybe he was just very hungry and ordered for two, or he was there with someone else. And it was also found a different mobile charger, you know, for charging your cell phone. And it's very suspicious about this ISIS Antifa literature that was there, because the mainstream media, they refuses to acknowledge this, well, as you suspect, right? Because that's one of the first things they mention. MSM fights to cover up Islamic link, just like San Bernardino. And we know also they like to cover up anti-fascist movement actions. But this source, I remember watching the Alex Jones show, he said that he got this information directly from squad members who was attacking Paddock's room to stop him. And they found this ISIS and Antifa pictures and everything. However, law enforcement might just be chill with the information they have before they decide to release it, because they are investigating it. And by revealing information about the case, it could actually hurt the case if these terrorists and anti-fascists would know that they would be onto them and know that there was some second shooter. But this second shooter seems to be some sort of a ghost. I mean, no one can really pinpoint where he retreated to, or, you know, whatever. It was like he was there shooting and then he was gone. But considering how many shots that were fired, I'm surprised that no one have, you know, reported like, oh, there's a guy shooting from this building or something like that, and reporting of shell casings. Because when you shoot a gun, for each shot you shoot, then there's gonna be an empty shell flying out of your gun, right? I'm not a weapons expert, but that's, you know, in every movie, every game, etc., you're gonna see those empty shell casings flying out of your gun each time you shoot. Or, you know, when they're gonna stand with a pump action shotgun and they're gonna be shooting, and then they're gonna do this action movement on the gun, and then the shell casings is just gonna fly out. So you might ask, where did all those shell casings land? I mean, if they were at these different distances, I don't think he had the time to really clean them up and get the heck out of there. That is the odd part for me. But if you do listen to the clips and listen to the testimonials of people, I mean, it was not just only people getting shot at, because they might have been at panic, heard echoes, you know, and in such a stressful situation, they might have, you know, gotten it wrong. But people from a far distance even recorded this and heard all of this. And they were like, yeah, they're definitely two shooters. And also, this girlfriend of his companion, or whatever you're supposed to call it, she was acting very, very weirdly. And I think it was really her at the airport. Take a look at the clip.
So here's the news. Billy Hughes was in LAX last Thursday and came across a woman acting very strange, saying America would be gone coming in 4 days. That was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 days later. Could this be Mary Lou Danley? This was posted on Facebook. 4 days, America, you all die. But before I play this video, let's show her yesterday returning from the Philippines, who we know is her, and you decide. Looks just like her, but maybe 5 years older. Here she is, returning. She's in a wheelchair, and she appears to kind of be stretched out like she's in a wheelchair or has trouble walking as well, if it's her, in the footage from last Thursday. So there she is returning. Looks just like the same woman, but in earlier photos, she has gray hair in the roots. Now it's dark. Looks just like her, but the hair is all black. Is all dark brown or black. So we don't know. We're just reporting on this because our listeners have been asking questions about it, and this lead needs to be followed up. So we just showed you returning yesterday. Now here is who listeners think may be her, saying, America, you're gone in 4 days. And that'd be 4 days later. Shot at LAX. People just shot video. They thought it was so weird, thought it was so strange. We looked on Facebook, posted last Thursday. Here is that video.
Nothing. Go back here. Touch you if I kill you. I can't keep you see. Time! Yeah, shit.
Come on, fam.
I know. Yeah. You fucking last gotta get you. Oh, it's our turn. I feel
Grab that,
like I'm
Charlie.
home now. 4 days. I know. 4 days, America.
4 days, America, And the weird thing is, you look at her, we know she flew out of LAX reportedly. They say earlier, but who can prove that? They've been lying about everything. She's all stretched out there like she doesn't walk. And it's the same thing with the wheelchair. That's speculation. Everything else earlier was research, documentation, and ongoing investigations.
I mean, who would say those things? To me, it seems like she was aware of what was going to happen, and she seems to be a bit deranged. I mean, come on, that's seriously either someone cooking the whole thing up, being very good impersonator on the look and makeup stuff, or you know, it's just so bizarre, the situation. I don't even know what to say about it. But then again, there it is. And also, there was some Hispanic people warning people that they were going to die. And that was also very spooky. Take a look at that.
Told us that before we left.
Yeah, minutes before that. But we just barely made it back into our room whenever it started.
And I mean, were you thinking, oh my gosh, this woman told us that before we left?
Yeah, I thought it had a positive correlation to it. Like, obviously she was telling us that either to tell us, to warn us, or to tell us that we were all going to die, and she was part of it. So
Okay, so they want the description of this woman. Describe to me what this woman looked like.
her and her boyfriend were both Hispanic. They were probably about shorter 5-footers, probably about 5'5", 5'6". They just look like everyday people. Just.
Can you tell us anything more about them, what they look like? Why were they escorted out? Were they escorted out because you were feeling uncomfortable about what they said?
Yes, because she had been messing with the lady in front of her and telling her that she was going to die, that we were all going to die. So they escorted her out to make her stop messing around with all the other people in front of them, but none of us knew that it was going to be serious.
This terror attack and, well, all of these things propping up, it's just horrific what they did, of course. I mean, yeah, seeing those dead bodies on the floor, it really brings you sadness. And of course, these things, the witness testimonials, it's just like a ghost story all of a sudden. And not just only that, why the hell would the guy say, don't turn on the lights? Because you can imagine on a festival they had lights on, so everyone was visible to the shooter site. So during the shooting, they decided to hit the switch right, so it would become dark and the shooters would not be able to see them. And hopefully more would be surviving, and hopefully they would shoot someone dead rather than someone alive or miss completely. And afterwards, when the shooter was taken down and everything, they refused to turn on the lights. And there could have been, people bleeding to death, needing help. And that clip was very suspicious. And here it is.
Come on. Hey, I need a shot. Right here. Right here. Right here. Right here. Right here. You got one. She's breathing. Why are the lights off? There are no EMTs. They've turned the lights off. Where are the EMTs and why are the lights off? We turned the lights off to secure the area. Shooting's already stopped. Shooting was going on during the shooting, and now we need lights to assess victims and assign EMTs. Okay, everybody right now that's here on ground is deceased. No, they're not. I got EMTs working on the guy here. I got EMTs working on the guy here. I got an EMT or a nurse working on the guy over here. I need lights on. If you know how to do that, get these lights back on. Okay, who are you? Innocent bystander, bro. My nurse is, my mom's a nurse. We're trying to help. Right now, that's here on ground is deceased. No, they're not. I got EMTs working on the guy here. I got EMTs working on the guy here. I got an EMT or a nurse working on the guy over here. I need lights on. If you know how to do that, get these lights back on. Okay, who are you? Innocent bystander, bro. My nurse is, my mom's a nurse. We're trying to help. Excuse me. There's more. Okay, come on.
I mean, take your pick. To me, you should always try to see if they're survivors, check pulses, etc. Because someone might just be unconscious, because getting hit with a gunshot, it's a really shocking experience, and if someone gets scared enough, they could just pass out. And a gun wound doesn't necessarily mean that you're dead. It's a quite high possibility that you actually survive a gunshot. But of course, these guns were quite heavy, and the distance, the bullet for sure had a hard impact. But I do believe that you should always try and save people's lives. And this should be such an obvious thing, I should not even be mentioning it, but to me, just watching this clip, knowing that some people are gonna be in this guy's defense, I mean, just turn on the goddamn lights and look at the people. Maybe it's a burden for you to just watch and actually take part of the failure of the defense of these people, but at least do the right thing and try to save someone's life. And also this shocking revelations of this Antifa and Kurdish ISIS alliance, or whatever you're supposed to call it, is truly shocking. But one thing they got wrong in the article is that, yes, our mainstream media have been trying to, shine light upon the PKK. I don't have much information on them before this stuff, though I heard Erdogan constantly denouncing them as terrorists. Erdogan's mainstream media, however, so if you're living in Turkey and watching this, he have been quite consistent in denouncing the Kurdish terrorist groups, and it is quite known that Erdogan doesn't like Kurdish people overall. And with this referendum of making Kurdistan independent from Turkey is really troublesome. I mean, they could become extinct like the Armenians should Erdogan decide to push forward with this. And I even heard that he refused to let any food come to their country through Turkey. So he intends to starve them to death. And if I recall correctly, something similar happened to the Armenians in the past. But anyways, it's really troublesome because the Swedish Gothenburg nationalistic socialist, or in other words, the Nazi march that was here, lots of Antifa members were here and they were shouting Allahu Akbar, and they were mostly ethnically Arabic. So you wonder just how many of those could have possibly been from this Kurdistan alliance. And it was also brought up to this Gothenburg Nazi march that most of the Antifa members were not even from Sweden. Most of them were from Germany, etc. And as you probably know, Antifa is the biggest in Germany, as it was founded there to begin with in the 1930s, I think, perhaps even earlier. And we have seen attacks like this before on the Scalise shooting at the baseball game, the most un-American thing. And it's quite interesting that these people talk about they're going to go to Christian events, shoot people, etc. And, well, obviously there have been shootings in churches. There have been now this shooting at this country festival, the baseball game shooting. I mean, like this Matt Maddox said, it's probably going to be on some football game or something. And as you can see on these football games, most people's watching are white people, and most of the players playing American football are black people. So it's a very liberal zone, right? But still, many of them are pro-American, but it's tolerant people, conservatives. They're painting the right-winged people, or conservatives overall, as some form of right-wing extremism is just false. Because they're very open-minded and tolerant, more tolerant than the liberal left. And they twist this truth so much that these tolerant right-winged people watching these football games, having to watch these American football players take a kneel, etc., are just getting sickened of this, and they're gonna lose their ratings. But never mind that. It's very possible that they might eventually try and go and shoot up such an event because they want the identity politics to burn. They want left and right to suffer, etc., etc. And with these shootings, they will try to impose gun laws, etc. Ban gun laws. And that's basically what Hillary Clinton came out and said. Let's not make this political, but imagine if the shooter had a suppressor. We should ban those. I mean, come on. Let's not make it political, and she makes it political. And lots of other politicians and show host said, you know, we need to ban guns. Why are people killing people? I don't understand. Well, there's evil people. There's people with ideological agendas. There's people with religious agendas. In other words, there's terrorists in the world, and they will not hesitate to kill you, your family, your children, your elderly. They don't care, as long as they will push through their thing, whether it is religion or political ideology. And it's very troublesome with this Kurdish alliance because they're communists, and communism is never good. It's never working. It's socialism, and it's always gonna fail. And it's not like Turkey is a good country either, with this Erdogan taking dictatorial powers, but I would not condone one or the other side there, down at the Kurdistan with this PKK or Turkey, or in any form of way, because both sides are taking very troublesome stances. Both of them are hostile to our free West and the rest of the world, for that matter, that wishes to be independent and not be caught up with this global politics and have to take a side in some war and, you know, live peacefully, yes, and prosper for themselves. Every single country will eventually be troubled by such ideologies, because they always tend to spread. And InfoWars had several, you know, live shows entirely based on the shooting. I mean, and they can be over 1 hour long. So they have lots of information on those. Usually it's quite repetitive information, because it's most likely they're going over the same things and adding some new things because they want to hold context. And they talk about responses from mainstream media, etc. And yes, at the beginning, the first few days, there was lots of talk in it, even here in Sweden, etc., on the news. But now it's sort of dead, and when you watch on the news now, you're gonna see Hillary Clinton claiming that Russia hacked the election, like she has done 1,000 times. I don't even know why they put it up as news, because it's just a propaganda hit piece, because she has been saying this since the election, etc. And it's funny that they said that no one could have hacked the election, but as soon as she lost, she obviously complained on, I think it was over 40 different people and groups. But in essence, if you want my look on the overall picture, this is not about just left and right. This is about identity politics and statehood power. I mean, these globalists want power. So they stage these tragedies or help promote them, influence that people would do these atrocities. And then they would have their puppets as politicians try to remove citizen righthoods, like moving out at certain times a day. That's a very good method to control people. Remove the ability to conceal your arms, to buy big weapons, etc. And eventually, people won't have guns to defend themselves. The Second Amendment, one of the most important rules that the American founders gave the American people. And with the American people weakened, well, obviously, the people that will have weapons will be only the government. And it takes people with weapons to take weapons away from people with weapons. And when people are unarmed, they can't fight back against an armed government, just like any totalitarianism. But even the communist YPG has been active at ethnically cleansing Christian Assyrians, Arabs, and other minorities in the areas they deem the Kurdish state. Oftentimes, the areas they claim don't even have a Kurdish population. Since the Kurdish population aren't a majority in the areas Kurdish militias are trying to annex, they are carrying out these ethnic cleansings of non-Kurdish minorities in an attempt to achieve a demographic shift. The YPG forcibly disarmed Assyrian Christian militias after assassinating their leader, David Jindo. In Iraq, The US-backed Kurdish militia Peshmerga forced Christian and Yazdali militias to disarm before abandoning them to genocide once ISIS attacked. And the Kurdish regional government of Iraq is still not allowing these minority groups to return to their villages, even though ISIS was pushed out 2 years ago. If you will look back to the Second World War, we do know that Switzerland had weapons and Hitler did not dare enter that country because they had weapons to defend themselves. So the true hidden agenda here is to consolidate power to the state/government and make us weaker as a people. I think the article covered up most things, quite splendidly. And of course, as usual, if you are interested to follow up more on these things, go to the article yourself and just click the links, because there was blue links just about everywhere linking to what they are talking about. So I highly suggest you doing that if you want to be more informed. But in the meanwhile, this is where I get off.
Las Vegas Sheriff Joe Lombardo, even the night of the shooting, was calm and composed. But in subsequent press conferences, he is agitated. He is scared. He acts like he is in fear of his life. And we're about to go to some of those press conference clips here in a moment. But then when you discover who's in control of this investigation, then you understand why he's so concerned and why my sources in federal law enforcement and others are concerned, from what they know, that the sheriff of Las Vegas is being threatened and that his life is in danger and that he could be suicided or arkancided at any time to cover up what really happened in Las Vegas.
There's been multiple phone calls and accusations or conjecture coming through social media that there's multiple shooters at other resorts. That has been proven to be false.
1049, I need medical for that caliber to come up to the North Valet, She said there was no gunfire outside the Bellagio Hotel last night.
Please be advised, now we're getting shots fired at Caesars and the Bellagio.
I don't want to give you a skewed timeline.
I do believe that there was 100% more than one shooter.
It sounded like a gang battle. It sounded like overlapping fire.
We got reports of a guy with a gun here. 705 Victor, what's your location? We're at the Paris. Copy, is a male with a 413 at the Paris. Subject with a 413 at Paris.
Is that reported or confirmed?
We got people running, and we got security trying to point out where the gunman is, and we can't find him.
Yeah, so there was a lady who pushed her way forward into the concert venue, into the first row, and she started messing with another lady and told us that we were all gonna die tonight. It was about 45 minutes before the shots were actually fired.
There is no conspiracy between the FBI, between LVMPD, and the MGM. And a couple of these items I will read from the narrative, because I don't want my comments to be construed or changed. So I wanted to ensure the accuracy of that. But most of this conference will be done strictly through my narrative provided to you. Okay? The dates of the 25th versus the 28th. This was not breaking news, no matter who believed it to be so in this form. We were aware of the discrepancy of the 28th versus the 25th in the early parts of this investigation. What we weren't aware of is why the date of the 28th was utilized in the early portion of this, as I was provided this information as part of the person registered in the suspect's room. So there is no conspiracy between the FBI, between LVMPD, and the MGM. Nobody is attempting to hide anything reference this investigation. The dynamics and the size of this investigation requires us to go through voluminous amounts of information in order to draw an accurate picture. My intent, like I stated earlier, is to give you information as I know it, unverified, to calm the public, not to establish a legal case. Everybody understand that? No question, sir.
Las Vegas Sheriff Joe Lombardo is running scared. InfoWars was the first on Monday morning, October 2nd, 2017, to report to the world, according to our FBI sources, that they found inside the reported shooter's hotel room at Mandalay Bay ISIS and Antifa paraphernalia. The news is lying. FBI HRT did the hit on the guy, and they found Antifa information in the room and photos of the woman in the Middle East. So he did not kill himself. The FBI hostage rescue team killed him because he was firing on them. So he did not want to be taken alive, and reportedly he did it. And it was Antifa crap everywhere and other things I'm not supposed to mention. That is directly from the hostage rescue team, by the way, Paul. And now the sheriff, after being threatened by the FBI, is having to double down and push the official story. This is after he signaled in the first week that there's no doubt that the mass shooter had help and that he'd clearly been radicalized.
I don't know if we have possible future prosecution. You've heard me say that we're comfortable that we have the suspect in custody, but something more may come of that investigation. And I want to understand the motivation that you described, okay, to prevent any future incidents. And, did this person get radicalized unbeknownst to us? And we want to identify that source.
What we do know for 100% certainty is this. There is a massive cover-up that is now ongoing. The Sheriff's Department, under the control of the FBI and a Robert Mueller protege known for his corruption in law enforcement, have blocked conservative and independent press from the latest press conferences. On top of that, we've now learned from the victims and survivors that all of their cell phones were scooped up and everything was downloaded and then erased when it was given back to them. And other victims have been threatened to remove their videos from YouTube, Facebook, and other platforms. In fact, some of the victims that survived, who reportedly saw two shooters, have now unexplainably died. Then we have Jesus Campos, the armed security guard at Mandalay, who a full 6 minutes before Paddock supposedly opens fire out of the window on the crowd is shooting hundreds of shots down the hallway at him. He was going to be interviewed by Sean Hannity on Friday, but now he's disappeared and no one knows where he is. Ladies and gentlemen, this cover-up is massive. ISIS took responsibility, and even AP admitted that when ISIS takes responsibility, almost always they are involved. And the media demonized me for even pointing out that they'd taken responsibility, and that our sources said they found evidence that Mr. Paddock and his girlfriend had traveled to the Middle East. Days later, it was confirmed that he and his girlfriend had traveled many times to the Middle East. InfoWars broke that information, yet again showing our sources are real and accurate inside the FBI.
Let me back up just a minute. In the early throes of this tragedy, I had advised each and every one of you that items of information were going to change. The dynamics of this investigation is far-reaching, it's wide, it's huge, and you can't expect exact answers in the early throes. My intent in the early throes were to give you the information to provide that calmness in the community to ensure that we didn't have a second player or a third player out hiding in the community intending to cause us harm.
We are doing a thorough investigation and only want to provide what is accurate to you. We will only give information that we have vetted and know to be true. I will not be speaking or answering questions on issues that we do not have the facts yet.
So we will get through that. I'm not giving you 100% satisfaction associated with what I'm going to give you today, because I think some of that's going to change. And we will not know that until we're completed with this investigation.
Again, let's be clear. We have uninjured survivors of the attack. 28-year-old women that just dropped dead, who are witnesses saying there's a cover-up. We've got all the firearms experts out there, special forces, you name it, saying clearly it's not a bump stock, it's a belt-fed light machine gun. We've got the FBI grabbing up all the surveillance footage and trying to keep it from getting on the internet, and then not releasing any of the footage from inside the casino Mandalay or from the attack that night. And then we've got the shadow of Robert Mueller. It's well known that he has stay-behind networks inside the FBI and to a great extent has control of the FBI to this day. And we have his protege, Aaron Rouse, known throughout the federal government as a very, very scary globalist operative in charge of this whole thing, glaring at the sheriff who is clearly upset, clearly threatened, and clearly fearing for his life. This is beyond any Hollywood movie I've ever seen. This is critical. Our federal law enforcement sources cannot give us specific intel because it's classified. But when pressed, they told me Aaron Rouse, just like his boss Mueller before, covered up Islamic connections to terror attacks here in America before, and basically ordered air marshals, FBI, you name it, to stop investigations. That's the info we've got, is that he is a specialist at covering up and basically enabling Islamic terror. That's really important when you see ISIS taking responsibility. And the FBI, before the bodies were even cold, Monday morning saying, we rule this out, they weren't involved.
As this event unfolds, we have determined to this point no connection with an international terrorist group. As this investigation continues, we will continue to work with our partners to ensure that this is factually, thoroughly, and absolutely investigated to be able to bring comfort and peace back to this community.
Ladies and gentlemen, from our intel, they weren't just involved, they ran the whole operation. And this was supposed to kick off an entire cascade of attacks. We know there's a cover-up. The question is, what is the cover-up of?
There is no conspiracy between the FBI, between LVMPD, and the MGM. Nobody is attempting to hide anything. Reference this investigation.
We know there's a cover-up. The big issue here is this sheriff is like a deer in the headlights. And we know the official story is now a lie, and he's coming out and saying, no, trust me, it's all true. Our timeline's correct, even though all the facts show it isn't. That's why now, more importantly than ever, it's up to we the people to get the word out online and to realize that even YouTube and Facebook admit that they are censoring alternative views and research about this event because they don't want the independent press to continue to investigate. Those of us that questioned it on day one have now been proven right that there's a cover-up. That's why it's more important than ever that citizen journalists get involved now, especially knowing the corrupt history of the FBI, especially under the Clintons and Obama, of helping orchestrate and then cover up events like we just saw in Vegas. The good news is they were trying to use this ISIS attack to go after our Second Amendment, but because intrepid investigators and citizen journalists exposed it from day one, they've suddenly dropped all their gun control and want this story to go away. I know here at InfoWars, we're not going to let it go away. And I know out there on the ground across this country, you're not going to let it go as well. I'm Alex Jones. If you're watching this transmission, you are the resistance. You need to pray for the sheriff because he's clearly crying out for help in all of his mannerisms, in all of his body language. And that head FBI agent in charge with his background and his MO is clearly there intimidating him and controlling what comes out. It's time for the American people to stand up and demand the truth. We're still facing a lot of corrupt forces that are dug in and entrenched. But the good news is, in 2017, everybody's got a camera and people are documenting. And there's no way when you do something in public like this to cover it up. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're running the biggest special we've ever had for our best-selling product, Brain Force, now Brain Force Plus. There's 20% more in each bottle. And we're now purchasing so much of it from the major organic manufacturer here in the United States that we've been able to get it for less. So I'm offering for the first time ever 50% off, and I thought I could offer this for maybe a month. I'm going to have to stop this special within a week because it is blasting out of our warehouse because the fans of it already are stocking up. They know how great it is. A whole bunch of organic, natural, healthy, known nootropics. Nootropic means for the brain. And if you want good, clean, focused energy, then Brain Force is for you, and you're supporting the broadcast at the same time. So for a limited time, ladies and gentlemen, Brain Force Plus is now 50% off or $19.96. That comes to 50.03, a little bit over 50% off the regular price. Similar nootropics that aren't even as pure or strong cost $50 to $70. It's a good deal at $39. It's $19.96 at InfoWarsLife.com or simply call toll-free 888-253-3139. And when you purchase Brain Force Plus or any of the other great products like Secret 12, Caveman, Oxy Powder, Super Mel Vitality, our fluoride-free Super Blue, Colloidal Silver, and Iodine Empowered toothpaste, you get to support the information war and get really high-quality products. When you sign up for AutoShip, you always get 10% off. And there's free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com and InfoWarsLife.com. There's free shipping on all orders of $50 or more. Again, that's InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. I want to just briefly thank listeners for their support of the broadcast and remind listeners that we are listener-supported, and it is your financial support getting good products in return that you need, and that symbiotic relationship and that 360 win that makes everything here we do possible. And we're not just going to have to end in the next week the Brain Force Plus special, 50% off. I'm going to have to end even sooner our Caveman Ultimate Paleo Bone Broth, Turmeric, Chaga Mushroom, Bee Pollen, and more concentrate. You talk about next level meal replacement, next level compared to whey, and it's great to mix with whey and then make shakes. It's incredible. My son is growing like a weed using it. He's bigger than I am already at 15. Incredible. It is amazing. InfoWarsLife.com, 50% off Caveman, but only a few days left. It's about to end. And folks, the globalists hate it when you do this. We're the tip of the spear because we're fearless, we're bold, because we understand the stakes are too high. The globalists win, we're all slaves. So don't thank me for what I'm doing. I want to thank you. We're all in this together. And when you get the great Molon Labe t-shirts, and you get the great books and videos, and when you get the great water filtration, you help yourself, you help your family. When you get the great air filtration systems, all of them, on sale right now at InfoWarsLife.com, you're funding the tip of the spear. But these specials have got to end. I mean, it may just be 4 or 5 days left that I'm able to offer Brain Force at this price because it's selling out so incredibly quickly at 50% off. But again, thank you all for your support because this helps fund our operation as we expand in the face of the globalist. Again, visit InfoWarsStore.com today and commit to helping the InfoWar. Funding the InfoWar is now more important than ever. And when you fund the InfoWar, you get incredible high-quality products at InfoWarsLife.com. That's 50% off Brain Force Plus, 50% off Caveman, but only for 1 week.